Welcome, messengers. We're here in the virtual video studio in the Bay Area, and today we're doing a spotlight interview with Dr. Michael Mason. I have him here with me, so Michael, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your message is?
Okay, the message is the infinite heart, which is a symbol for oneness, and it's an alchemical, spiritual alchemy of several symbols that came together after many years of studying many various belief systems like Hinduism, Buddhism, quantum physics, Kabbalah, which is the mystical teachings of Judaism. I was raised a Christian Scientist with a Jewish father, so that kind of made me open-minded, although some people might consider me a little confused because of that. But what happened was I was very analytical. And it was kind of like an ego trip for me to find fault with whatever system I was studying. And then if there was a contradiction, for example, just the very beginning, when I was going to Sunday school, there was the 10 Commandments. And one of them was thou shalt not murder. By the way, it's thou shalt not murder, not thou shalt not kill. In the original Hebrew, it says murder. And then not too much later after that, I'm learning the story of Noah and the ark, and supposedly God basically kills everybody in the planet in the flood. So that was a contradiction that made me realize, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. And from that point on, I would find contradictions in whatever system of belief I'd study. And then there was an epiphany when I was in a Buddhist class. And there was this wonderful Buddhist nun from England. And she made a statement that went like this: we need to really be grateful and appreciative of the Buddha, because we have him to look up to in all his great teachings. How wonderful is that? So with my analytical mind, I thought, okay, that's great. Who did the Buddha have to look up to? Because I always go to the seed source of everything. I analyze till I get to the very source, which is great to a certain extent, and we'll get to that. And she thought about that. I guess she didn't get asked that question too often. And she said, well, there were other enlightened beings that Buddha had to look up to also. So, of course, what's my next question? Who did they have to look up to? Right? Because now Buddhism is great. It's a great psychology of the mind, but it's not really a religion per se, because they don't talk about God. They don't mention God. And that's what I guess I was trying to get her to admit. So she hesitated, and at that point I felt a little sorry for her that she really didn't have an answer, and it was probably a little embarrassing for her to the public. So I kind of won the argument per se, but I also felt a little bad that I put her on the spot. So eventually it got to the point where I wasn't finding anything that had all the answers. I found the Course in Miracles had a great story of creation. I found lots of fault with that. The Kabbalah was great until they started getting into the religiosity and the dogma. And that totally turned me off. But then I noticed that the Kabbalistic story of creation combined with the Course in Miracles story of creation, you put them together and it creates this spiritual alchemy that made sense to me. And so that's what I started to do. And then there was another epiphany when I met a wonderful psychologist who, very intelligent. We had wonderful discussions and debates. And she realized that there were some points that she wasn't getting through to me, and she told me, Michael, you're too much in your head. You're too analytical. You're thinking too much. You got to feel more. You have to be more from your heart. And Christian Pankhurst, of course, talks about heart intelligence, right, which is fabulous. So it goes along with what I eventually learned. And Ilona was her name. She gave me a technique that I did that helped me awaken my heart. And she warned me before she gave me this technique. And she said, Michael, you know, I don't know if this is something you want or you can really deal with, because it's going to really change you. You're going to feel more. You're going to have more empathy for other people. And you might even cry more often, which isn't socially acceptable. Well, it wasn't anyway for men to cry, right? So I did the technique. It opened my heart. And that made me realize that I came to what I call my favorite Dr. Mason quote. When you analyze your anal, when you realize you're real. So that's what I'm still working on today, and I can still analyze, which is great. And I think my system, Matt, is a great system because it can really help with people in the Western world who are analytical, scientifically minded, because my system is called PQM, which means practical quantum metaphysics. Now, I understand it's a mouthful, but the emphasis is on the practical. So it's not this new age woo-woo system that, oh, oneness, that's great, but how does that really help us in our daily lives when we're stuck in traffic and we're dealing with difficult bosses and we're having relationship problems with our spouse or our girlfriend or our kids and so forth? Well, absolutely it helps, because what the oneness symbol does, and you see it behind me, and if you look at it carefully, it looks like, imagine a smile here and two dots in the middle. You see this big smiley face, right? It's a transformation of the normal smiley face, but it's a transformation of perception. And if you perceive through the infinite heart, through your infinite heart, and there's the infinite mind too, they're connected, then you have more empathy for the other person. And instead of always trying to be right in a debate or an argument like I used to always want to be, that's a big ego trip. You listen to the other person, you hold space for them, and even if they disagree with you, you understand from their perspective, they're right. See what happens? And you can agree to disagree. It works wonders.
So we have this symbol here that's behind you, and I want to talk a little bit more about that if we can. It looks to me like sacred geometry with an infinity sign in it. What's the significance of this symbol, and how does it relate to the work that you do in the world and what your message is?
Okay, the symbol is, again, it's a spiritual alchemical transformation of the human heart symbol, which, if you notice the human heart symbol, it has a point on the bottom. And in my talk at the Messenger Summit, I showed a picture of that. And then I showed a picture of the real human heart, and there's almost no connection whatsoever. So I looked at that once and I said, what is this point at the bottom of the heart? And then I realized a point is an illusion. There's really no such thing as a point. If you magnify a point with a microscope, like the end of the needle, it's round. It's perfectly round. And no matter how sharp something seems, no matter you go magnify it, it's all subatomic particles, which essentially are round. So it's an illusion. And I realized that this is a heart. What do you think of, Matt, when you look at the human, the heart that represent? What does it represent?
The symbol of the human heart, what you're asking?
Yeah.
First thing I think of is actually
right?
Valentine's Day.
Okay, great. Well, that's about how we share love. Well, what I realized was it represents human love, not unconditional love. We don't have a symbol for unconditional love. So what I did is I took away the point at the bottom of the heart, and I replaced it with a nice smooth curve. Now, these curves, there's 4 of them. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Those are, you're right, it has to do with sacred geometry. Those are phi ratio curves. Phi ratio is also termed the God curve, the God ratio, the Fibonacci ratio, and it's a very specific number. It's 1.8 something, and it's an infinite decimal. So that's another aspect of infinity, why it's called the infinite heart. So you put 2 of those together, and it creates this heart right here without a point at the bottom. that alone, that heart is the heart that represents unconditional love. So you put two of them together and you have the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. And this is just the beginnings of the amazing realizations that come about from connecting with this oneness symbol. There's also an infinity sign in here, and you've got to keep in mind that this is just a two-dimensional version of a three-dimensional energetic symbol. All right? Now getting back to the heart. So there's the heart symbol that goes into the pot of alchemy. There's the Fibonacci curves that goes into the pot of alchemy. And then there's another amazing symbol that if anybody read the Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code, he mentions it. It's the circumpunct. The circumpunct is a symbol for God. Very few people are aware of this. There's a point in the middle, which is actually in the center of a sphere. All right? Because remember, this circle, this blue circle, represents the outside of a sphere. So the very center of the sphere is the point. Now, a point is non-dimensional. It doesn't occupy space. It's just a point. And then there's a circle around it. So the point with a circle around it is the circumpunct. That's a symbol for God. So we've got the heart, the Fibonacci curve, the symbol for God, those three items put into that pot of spiritual alchemy. Then the last one is something called the taijutsu. Now most people don't know what the taijutsu is because that's the proper term for the yin-yang symbol. It's the taijutsu. All right, the yin-yang symbol, that is a fabulous and amazing symbol, but it represents duality. It's yin-yang, it's opposites. It's up and down, left and right, male, female, right and wrong. Now, when you look at all of the hot and cold, here's an amazing example of hot and cold. You know, we look at the sunspots, and this is, again, all is perception. I'm going to get to the three axioms of practical quantum metaphysics in a minute. But the sunspots are black against the heat of the sun behind it. You know why? Because they're cooler than the surface of the sun around those sunspots. They're cool areas. Now, in contrast to the surface around it, they show up black because they're cooler. But what I learned is if you take that area where the sunspot is, you move it away from the sun and put it in the blackness of outer space, it becomes white. Now that's a scientific example of all is perception, which is one of the PQM axioms. And those PQM axioms are basically, you can use a mnemonic, which is perception of one energy, POE. So the metaphysical axiom is all is one. The quantum axiom is all is energy. And the practical axiom is all is perception. And you can use those three axioms to solve just about any problem in society. And the seed of all the problems, I believe, in society is the belief in separation. And now, this is an important belief to have, of course, because remember, a lot of these concepts I'm talking about, Matt, they're concepts that are from the perspective of the metaphysical, from the perspective of our soul. Now, we are a soul which is an infinite light of love that is occupying for a certain number of years this physical body, which is our persona. And of course, we have to have the perception of separation in order to distinguish ourselves from others. So we have to be careful that we don't get into the challenge that can freeze people, where we perceive both, which is important, and we perceive other people's perspective, but then we become a fence sitter and we can't make any decisions. So we got to watch out. That's something that I'm writing a blog about right now. So back to the symbol. You've got the Fibonacci curve, the heart, the taijutsu, which is the yin-yang, and you put them all in this alchemical pot, cook it up, render it, and this is what you get, the oneness symbol. Now, You see, if you take away one of these, take away the red one, and you just imagine only the green with a circle, it's kind of like a yin yang, isn't it? You see this part here? Okay, without the red, you've got, there's the green, and inside the green it's the yin yang. But what it is the yin yang would stop right about here. That's duality consciousness. We expand our consciousness, expand our perception out just enough, and it allows this energy of the yin yang to continue flowing in an infinite loop. See the way that works? It doesn't stop. If I had the yin yang symbol here, you'd see it goes like that, and it stops on the edge of the surface. It doesn't continue to flow. So this represents a new consciousness for humanity, which is a transformation from the consciousness of separation, which is Homo sapien, which is, remember how I was thinking? Homo sapien means knowledge. Yo sé in Spanish is I know. So Homo sapien is like knowing person. To Homo spiritus, which is a person that's more focused on their spiritual side and their connection between human beings.
Michael, with the couple of minutes that we have left here, would you take our audience through your website and just show us what they'll find if they go there?
Okay, the website that I'm working with now is IFGT, which is Institute for Global Transformation. Marianne Miller, who is the founder of IFGT and IFGT.org, I connected with her, and she resonated with the whole concept of our next evolution being the oneness movement per se. She calls it the infinite heart movement. And it's about getting word out to the world that there is such thing as a oneness symbol. What I noticed is that in many ancient belief systems, there was the understanding that we're all one. Now, in everything in our lives, we have symbolism. We have words, we have letters symbolizing sounds, musical notes, we have logos for companies, we have symbols for religions like the cross, the star, the sickle and the star, we have the shield of David, but we don't have a symbol, we never did until now, we never had a symbol for oneness. And we're visual creatures. So eventually, once this gets accepted, you can connect energetically with this oneness symbol, and that alone you can almost energetically download all the wisdom about it, about connection and oneness. One other thing, when I went to, I noticed that the more people that connect with a symbol and see it and think about it, the more things they notice that I never noticed. When I went to Israel, my brother alone, if you look from above, down on the heads of two people, they're actually like this. They're reaching out, holding hands, and touching heads. So that's, again, a symbol for connection and oneness. So as far as the website, she's got a fabulous article on here. There's a link to the 3D version. It's a 3D video that whoever's listening to this, click on that link and you'll see a fascinating 3D version where it pauses on a sacred geometry symbol called the Vesica Pisces, or some people call it the Vesica Pisces.
Where is that link?
And it's that's right on the website you're looking at, where it says 3D Infinite Heart Video.
Okay.
If people just click on that, it'll take you to the oh, actually, it takes you to another link which talks about it, and then you click on that one, and hopefully now it goes to the YouTube video where it plays that 3D version of the Infinite Heart, which is absolutely fascinating what appears. That Vesica Pisces is a very powerful symbol. It's actually the fish symbol that Christians use on bumper stickers, and it's got Jesus in it. A lot of people don't realize that that's just part of the symbol of two circles in conjunction, and it creates that Vesica Pisces in the center, which is called the fish symbol. It's amazing sacred geometry symbol.
Okay, great, Michael. Thank you. what's the best way for the audience and the members out there to be able to connect with you, to contact you, and get in touch? And also, if they were to reach out to you and work with you, is that working on a one-on-one basis, or is it in some sort of group dynamic, or is it really just about getting your message out there? So if you would talk about that for a sec.
Well, I encourage anybody to email me with questions. They can, there's an email link. They can email me. Probably the easiest one is just I@IFGT.org. That's the simplest email I have, all my emails. And I'm willing to do life coaching. I have this website I'm working on now, which is going to be lifeadvisor.com, and that's going to be exciting because I've got jewelry that people can purchase. That's the one symbol like this. I've got 24 karat. I've got inexpensive items that are in stainless steel for as little as $24 each, and it's a great conversation piece because people will say, well, that's interesting. What is it? And that's an introduction to having a discussion. Oh, this is the oneness symbol, and check out the website, and let's share it, and so forth. So yeah, I work one-on-one. I'm working on classes and seminars for practical quantum metaphysics to teach people how to use this in their daily lives to help in relationships and work and empower. It's all about empowering people to recognize that inner infinite source of power that we all have and access it to empower them in any way in their lives to achieve whatever they want.
I like that that name a lot, practical quantum mechanics, or no, metaphysics, sorry. I like that a lot. I'd love to hear more about that as well. Michael, thank you for joining us on this interview today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you next time. So.
My pleasure. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, messengers, for joining us. Join us on our next Spotlight interview, and we'll see you soon.